Dear friends, thank you for taking the time to join us in our further explorations of the insanities that are created by modern academia. Today, we are going to be exploring the feminist extensions of Marshal Mcluhan, edited by Sarah Sharma and Riyanka Singh. Now, I have no expectations for this book. I don't think that it's going to do a good job of critiquing Marshal Mcluhan because it's going to be repeating a lot of hive mind idiomatic things, right? It's going to be just like the same as every other paper that you read today. And this is just a guess, so we don't know. I could be wrong. And this is kind of actually a break for me. I'm taking a break from a defense of Leo Strauss and the defense of Hannah Arendt, because in our modern intersectional feminist world, people like amazing thinkers like Hannah Arendt are called racist and sexist. So I'm going to be working on the defense of Hannah Arendt next. So let's take a look at this understanding media. Now, if you don't know who Marshall McLuhan is, he's the guy who came up with the medium is the message. Very important guy. He basically predicted the internet, and a lot of his theories basically came true after 40 years, or a lot of his perspective on, except the only problem is that, and here is where we're going to get into a very specific thing, right? Because right now we live in a time where what you do online, right, we don't have the social norms of what is acceptable, what is the normal way of doing things online. So the Marshall McLuhan line is like the medium is the message, is that the medium itself is the message, not the content of what we say. And that goes in direct opposition with a feminist worldview that sees, for example, the recent last year or something situation where someone joined a VR chat room and they were groped by other like in a VR world, they were groped and they felt sexually harassed, and that this all has legal implications, right? Whether what you do online, how it is basically because it's getting worse, right? Now that the governments see that you can prosecute, freedom of speech. Basically, you can prosecute freedom of speech. You can prosecute all of these things. So if you're playing a video game and you there's a thing where you teabag someone after you shoot them or something, that could be considered sexual harassment in our incredibly vicariously traumatized, endlessly vicariously traumatized, insatiable insecurity world that is created by intersectional feminists, where there are strangers and racists and sexists across, under, beyond every, at the edge of every corner. There is danger because there's an insatiable insecurity, and the state cannot, the state can't, help you with your insecurity. Those insecurities are, you have to, and this is why we see a projection culture, the projection culture of these people telling everybody else that they need to go see therapists, right? When therapy is not really what we need. We need community, we need understanding, we need people to come together. But because we've commodified emotional labor, we've commodified our interactions with one another, especially in the feminist world, that they've commodified all of our emotions. They've moralized the commodification of our emotions. We aren't actually able to build community anymore. We're not able to build solidarity anymore. So let's take a look. I'm going to be reading it. So I'm going to be reading it, and we're going to be doing interjections as we read. So thank you for taking the time to read this wonderful work with me. And I'm in Toronto too. That's why it's very interesting. I'm working in my office, which is a tiny coach house on the margins of the University of Toronto campus. It is Marshall McLuhan's former study. It is also the site of historic Monday night seminars where McLuhan held courts for his students, the public, and the occasional interested celebrity. These Monday night seminars have been ongoing sporadically under the center's various directorships since McLuhan's time. I hear the doorbell ring, followed by the heavy door bursting open. I've always found it quite telling that the media theorist who imagined that the coming electronic age could give way to a world made up only of centers of power without margins was allotted such a small building on the margins of campus to house his Center for Media Study. Its location is also indicative of the marginal status of media studies as an academic discipline during McLuhan's time. In fact, McLuhan was the only person who, in media studies, there's very few rigorous media studies. Media studies have always been the bird courses. You take media studies as a bird course, and it is a bird course because they water down philosophy. They water down the very difficult concepts, and they call it media studies. The invention of media studies itself is part of capitalism. Otherwise, it would just be part of this. The invention of media studies is part of this like bifurcation, is industrialization, where every topic has to be like split up, right? Media studies is something that should be just part of philosophy or education. I don't think why media studies should be alone. And it should be either in the art studies or media. I don't think media studies should even exist, right? Mcluhan's ideology was why media studies began in the first place, because of Mcluhan's ideology. But Mcluhan's thoughts are all steeped in rigorous philosophy, whereas what you see now in media studies now is just a bunch of bird courses, a bunch of watering down, and then people get their PhDs and they write books like this. So let's just see if this person fully appreciates the work of Mcluhan or not, and the intersectional people that write for this. In response to the doorbell, I call out an apprehensive hello while running down a staircase so narrow that only one body at a time can squeeze through. There he was again. He was almost white-haired and white-eyed, clutching papers, an essay or an old dissertation, a notepad, and a camera. He would ask me who was in charge of the place. Could he speak to the manager? Could I introduce him to the researchers or to the director? Could he walk me around and soak up the energy of Marshal Mcluhan? He's wondering if maybe he could sit where Mcluhan sat for just a little while. He was there to learn about Mcluhan. Could I tell him something? He had arrived from down the street, other side of campus, another town from the south, from across the Atlantic. Mcluhan outside the Coach House Institute. He would interrupt my classes and meetings. He would appear at the window of the main room with his hands forming goggles over his eyes. He would barge into my lectures asking, "Is there someone who knows about Mcluhan?" Once he walked in and stood in front of me while I was addressing the class and started yelling at my students. He knew Mcluhan personally. He would often tell me that Mcluhan predicted the digital age. Of course he did. He would tell me how Mcluhan's theories are really important because of technology today. I would be polite and nod my head, thanking him for his profound insight. He would write me unsolicited emails and letters and send me copies of his new self-published books, essays, or articles typed in robotic font, and sometimes the audio of a presentation he made on Mcluhan. He was entrepreneurial and had some of his own business cards made. He had also a running center for technology. Where was it? It was online at thisaddress.com. He was running his own Mcluhan speaker series. He would ask me for feedback on his writing. Did I have office hours? Mcluhan had told him something I should probably know. He was working on algorithms, cell phones, AI, VR, and driverless cars. Did I know that these media are really important and have effects on culture? Did I know that Mcluhan predicted these media too? He was Mcluhan's former student, now a Mcluhan consultant, and could teach one of my classes if I liked. He had the right sort of access to Mcluhan that no one else could claim. He would offer unverifiable accounts of what Mcluhan was about to say. This is going to be a critique of patriarchy, wait, before his sudden stroke regarding the emerging electronic world. He was an appointed Mcluhan fellow from well before my time and he please get a key to the building. He is a Mcluhan interlocutor. Here is what he knows. He is Mcluhan's Indian guru, and therefore we must have a connection too. Mcluhan was his teacher. He was Mcluhan's last student. He was Mcluhan's very last student. Did I want to know what Mcluhan's last student said to him? In short, this man could walk into a Mcluhan center searching for evidence of Mcluhan and find me instead. The disappointment was palpable, often making its way to his social media tirades about center's new direction and new occupants. I did not have a direct line to Mcluhan. If I had not been his apprentice, could not channel his spirit directly or contact him via Ouija board, what was I doing there? More to the point, what was the feminist technology scholar doing there? What was the feminist technology scholar doing there? Just like what feminists do everywhere else, affirmative action. They take over the situation and they impose their worldview that was created in one place in one time, and they impose this universality of intersectionality everywhere they go. When I was appointed the new director of Mcluhan Center for Technology in 2017 is a key year here, right? This is when Jordan Peterson was doing his things, right? I think it was 2017, 2018. Yeah, 2017 was pure Peterson time. The coach was still infamously known as a clubhouse of Mcluhan fans. Of course. So let's see if it's going to be Peterson here. No? Okay. No Peterson? Nothing? Okay. There's no Peterson. I'm just looking for Jordan Peterson ever. Like many visitors out, because Jordan Peterson is also part of the University of Toronto. This is okay. Like many visitors outside of his orbit, I encountered a difficult space steeped in patriarchal attachment to the Great Father. Ah, at least here, we have a good definition of what patriarchy is. Patriarchy is worship of the father. It is not all men on top of all women, as the ideology lies to us today. And what's funny is that here's the interesting, right? Replete with essentialist understandings of race and gender. Essentialist understandings of race and gender. While they essentialize a patriarchal structure, right? They essentialize, they can see what the problem is objectively. They know exactly what the problem is objectively. They can recognize it, right? The problem is the heteropatriarchal whatever order, right? That is the essential structure. But they clearly see it, right? They clearly see that essential, but that essential structure, they don't see that as an essential structure. They see the understandings of race and gender as being essential structures. Okay, well, is something like transracial possible? Those difficult questions within the supposed commensurability between the intersection of race and gender just always just go unquestioned because these people don't think. They're not thinkers. Along with a disturbing emphasis on global emphasis development theories. The center also seemed to be plagued by being constant revival, much like its founder. Every few years, Mcluhan's disciplines would predict that he was going to be more important than ever now. Again, of course he's not, because of the intersectional understanding of the world, right? Mcluhan's ideas can't, where the medium actually is treated as the message, can never actually happen because we live in a world where content matters, right? The content is important for feminists. In an attempt to popularize him, they would elevate his work and legacy while guarding their particular reading of his theories. But fandom, hagiography, endless revivals, and self-serving resuscitations of a revered figure are far from scholarly research and farther still from feminist work. Of course, feminism is not about revering men. What I found it said was a space that did not need a revival, but rather a retrieval. Like a hex, I raised a hot pink banner across the coach house for my first year as director. Yeah, these are witches. These are witches. Not only did I want this space to be visible from the street, but I was going to highlight for my first year what I recognized as possible feminist version of Mcluhan's most famous aphorism, that the medium is the message. To me, the crux of his original theory of media and power seemed to be most alive within feminist scholarship and on technology. Let's see. And by critical feminist approaches, I mean in particular the work on technology that does not treat difference and identity as if it is an addendum to technology, but rather scholarship that understands how technology alters can determine the social experience of gender, race, sexuality, and other forms of social difference. Herbert Mcluhan was a Canadian professor, blah, 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 okay. Since 2017, I've been paying homage to Mcluhan's thematically while gathering the critical feminist race, queer, and indigenous media scholars, artists, and activists who take up Mcluhan's privileging of the medium in the novel and politically significant ways. However, they do so without pledging allegiance to its father. And really, they don't need to. Their work shares a common enduring thread worth highlighting within feminist media studies, but also for Mcluhan scholars. These thinkers have been doing critical, there's no critical thinking. Work that it's just repeating the same ideology and applying everywhere. That's not critical thinking. Their media study shines a light on the way, it's so general. Everything that they say is so general. We're always gonna recognize. It's what academics say is very little, is so little difference between what academics say and what the politicians say, right? It's the same thing. It's presentation culture. It's just virtue signaling. It's just native advertisements, right? These are all native advertisements. Their media study shines a light on the ways that inequitable power dynamics are tied to the properties and capacities of technologies that mediate power in social and institutional spaces. Okay? Now remember, my friends, Mcluhan is a Catholic conservative, and for good reason. Thus, back to our playful themes at the center. Rather than Mcluhan's mechanical bride, we have the mechanical bro. Rather than understanding media, we can have understanding misunderstanding media. And rather than argue over which medium is hot or cool, we must recognize the hot message in which we live and think about the technological possibilities for radical and just social change. See, it's only within a narcissistic worldview that you think that you can are able to go out and socially construct. Only narcissists think that. People who are understanding of their limitations in the worldview in their world, we understand that we can't just go out and individually go out and socially reconstruct things. Social construction is it takes thousands of years. This is something that Mcluhan talks about, right? And rather than pretend we all live in a global village, now that is interesting. Rather than pretend like we all live in a global village, if there was something that destroyed the global village, it's feminism, right? If there was something that destroyed the global village, it was this power equals privilege logic, this copyright culture, Internet 2.0. In the beginning of the internet, it was totally a global village. It was very global village. It was a tribal world. The internet was very tribal, and that's where us millennials are coming from when we see like Gen Z people just mindlessly, buy Netflix or mindless, become subscription services, just mindlessly agree to these subscriptions. Dude, you can watch the show for free. You just have to search a little bit. Okay, whatever. Especially during the COVID-19 and the anti-black and anti-indigenous racism that are all plagues to a better social world, we can understand the global spillage. Again, the reason why the anti-black and anti-indigenous racism became more this, in the white world, there was a color blindness that was setting in. The idea before intersectionality, before this constant reminder that you are brown and you must stay down. That's what intersectionality does. You are brown, you must stay down. You are brown, you must stay down. Before that world, before this constant amygdalic cost-benefit analysis of privilege and emotional labor, that intersectional feminism that imposed upon our social relationships with one another, before that world, the world was one of color blindness. Color blindness is much better. Color blindness was a natural reaction to the reality of racism. Color blindness was a slow getting out of not talking about it. And if you want to learn about that one, you can look at my video on the wisdom of Morgan Freeman, the wisdom of Morgan Freeman video. You can search for that. The purpose of the Monday night series, guided by these plays on Mcluhan's key works during my time as director of Mcluhan, has been to highlight the elevated critical voices that have been historically left out of both the building and the discourse. Now, it's funny because I'm sure that the purpose for Mcluhan was some sort of democratic polis, building some Greek polis, and this idea, this Greek democratic agora, space for public conversation, that idea is dead. The feminists have killed the public sphere because they've moralized the commodification of emotional labor, and they excommunicated people like Hannah Arendt, who were trying to defend the public sphere. And we're going to be doing the defense of Hannah Arendt soon. It also means to address the common question I'm often confronted when feminist scholars ask me, but you don't really like Mcluhan, do you? I'm not so much concerned with the man or his legacy. I am in the way in which media theory has inspired me to think about power and structural differences. Now, isn't this funny, right? So she sees the pushback just because Mcluhan is a man, right? Even though the guy is a fucking genius, it doesn't matter what his theories are. He's a man, right? And as a man, you can separate the content from media, but as a woman, you can never do that. Okay. Thus, the thematics of the Monday, and I think that's where this book is gonna go. I have no idea where this book is gonna go. I'm well read in feminism and I'm well read in Mcluhan, so I'm trying to guess where this book is going. Okay, so they do not seek to repair him. Rather, they are meant to confront his limitations of Mcluhan's problematic examples while taking up the broader potential and understanding that technological is a specific vector of power that demands a feminist understanding. This book gathers a sample of the scholars that visited and participated in Monday Night Seminar series and other related programming over the last few years. What is collected here is not merely an exhaustive list or fully representative of the potential and scope of these conversations, but they speak to some of the conversations that have been taking place in Mcluhan's coach on Monday nights. Okay, so basically, let's see if there's any critical interpretations of Mcluhan here, or is it just going to be rehashing the same idiomatic tropes? And we're going to see if there's going to be any thinking here. So, introduction. Feminism is obviously not the first word that springs to mind when considering Mcluhan. The world-renowned Canadian media theorist and so-called father of media study was not a feminist, and I certainly have no intention of reviving him as one. Nevertheless, I believe that it is necessary to retrieve his work from for feminist ends. And basically, this actually means to destroy his work, right? To destroy his work. That's what feminism does. It just destroys, right? That's what intersectionality does. It destroys. It destroys without creating, right? It wants to socially create, but first it has to socially destroy. And when you socially destroy, all that is left is capitalism, unfortunately, right? And that's why Mcluhan is a Catholic. Mcluhan is a Catholic conservative. He believes in the ideas of Heidegger, okay? Mcluhan's media theory offers a singular conception of the technological as a structuring form of power, one that offers feminist media studies insight into how a culture's dominant technologies can alter and determine social experience of race, blah, blah, blah. This volume emerges out, I'm just going to call this intersections, experience of intersections. This volume emerges out of a concern of the understandable lack of feminist engagement with Mcluhan. In fact, the reason why is because Mcluhan is difficult, right? And the reason why there's a lack of rigorous engagement, okay? Now, we're going to say if this is going to be a rigorous engagement or not. And the era of critical race and feminist studies perspectives on scholarly updating of Mcluhan for contemporary readers. Mcluhan's media theory has much to offer feminist media studies. This is a central claim of this volume. Moreover, the political potential and critical importance of Mcluhan's media theory depends upon a feminist retrieval. The chapters in this volume, again, it can't be a feminist retrieval. Feminism, in my eyes, in my worldview, I think feminism is just at odds with it. I could be wrong. Let's see. This chapter in this volume consists of a series of original essays, experimental writings, and interviews from emerging and established media studies scholars, activists, etc. The key of this volume is to employ a feminist approach to Mcluhan's media theory. Okay, let's keep going. Mcluhan's media theory transformed both academic and popular understanding of media. On the scholarly front, Mcluhan's theories have continued to be revisited, updated, and applied to new media contexts, as well as influencing other strands of media. Okay, blah, blah, blah. The celebration of Mcluhan is a difficult one for feminist media studies to contend with. While he ushered in the field of study as media, his texts are peppered with frequent misogynistic, racist, and nonsensical commentary. His cult status and praise for his scholarly contributions seems so. Pointing out matter-of-fact things about differences are just hate now. Okay, and Mcluhan is not somebody who hates. Okay, but he is a hater here. He's a racist, misogynistic, right, and nonsensical. Okay, not only is he racist and nonsensical. The racism and misogyny is nonsensical. I think those are. See, this was one of the big problems of actually Hannah Arendt, right? What was this idea that stupidity is naive, or like evil is naive. It doesn't have to be. Evil can be completely rational, and it is. It is. If you just look at, a lot of the reasons why the right wing does what it is, it's just rational. You just have to look at from their point of view. Okay. His cult status and praise for his scholarly contributions seems too often entangled with those who consider themselves Mcluhan experts. His theories are grand and universalizing, referring to the epochal shifts of ages that include a media typology of a singular white male subject. It is well known that Mcluhan turned to essentialist and racist categories of African indigenous cultures, particularly in describing Western and non-Western literacy. It doesn't help that scholarly updates of Mcluhan for new times occur as if feminist and critical race approaches to technology have never existed. Yeah, because they're dumb. There's nothing that they're adding to the conversation. They just all say the same fucking shit. 2004, Leslie Shade Barber Crow argued powerfully that the legacy and scholarship dedicated to Mcluhan does not address incorporate or attend to gender, blah blah blah. They just all say the same fucking talking head hive mind shit. They don't actually say anything. Say something. Say something specific. Mcluhan's legacy is maintained by a group of global disciplines who have taken it upon themselves to declare what Mcluhan would say or think today. Anthony Enns argues that the lack of political engagement with Mcluhan's work has long been regarded as one of the main reasons his work is rejected and even ridiculed as unserious scholarship. It's crazy how amazing thinkers like Mcluhan today in our world of publish or die mentality, where everybody has to publish or die, all these affirmative action people have to publish or die, right? It just produces all of this inflated academia. And that's what Gibber and Majumdar and all these thinkers are responding to. So what we have to respond to is no longer a rigorous critical theory. We're responding to this publish or die affirmative action hive mind mentality all the time. So, and this is just one of the examples. Much of the extension of Mcluhan's theories into the digital age interpret his notion that media determine culture as a singular effect upon the same singular universal human subject. Maybe. This is a straw man. This is a straw man. And it is a straw man that is proposed by someone who's supposed to be a defender of, or someone who's supposed to be a representative of Mcluhan's ideas. You see, if you are going to be the director of Marshal Mcluhan theory place, okay, you can't have this straw man idea. You have to have a response to this. Okay, you have to have a response to this. And you see, this is a hive mind mentality she can't get out of it. Now she's talking about Elon Musk, right? The first thing she talks about is Elon Musk. Oh, there's a relationship between Mcluhan and parallels Elon Musk. This is her own psychology, right? It's her own what's going on in social media. Elon Musk is the biggest thing. Okay, such a view parallels dangerous and uncritical view of technology espoused by Elon Musk. What are you talking about? Elon Musk is very critical of AI. Haven't you seen? I warned you. I tried to warn you. Elon Musk does that. And it's evidenced by the tech bro culture of Silicon Valley. Excuse me? What? Tech bro culture of Silicon Valley? Dude, there's affirmative action in every technological thing. I know pretty much, do you know how many people I know that have been given affirmative action positions in technological corporations? So many. Who remains willfully blind to the realities of uneven technological futures that they are increasingly responsible for. See, feminism is always, they are responsible, not I am responsible. See, Derrida tells us about what Nietzsche teaches us. What does Nietzsche teach us? Nietzsche teaches us to be responsible for that which we do not find ourselves responsible for, which is, and Nietzsche was a misogynist, and Nietzsche was in direct opposition to the it's too much emotional labor to educate you culture of modern feminists. Feminist media theory is not a fan club. Mcluhan's failure to acknowledge the dynamics that bind together bodies rhythmically by powerless in the technology relegate him to the tired domain of great white male legacies. This is the director of the Mcluhan fucking... That's fucking insane, right? Okay, if you want to guillotine your heroes, do it. But not from a place of hive mind, repetitive. Do it from a respectful place. To critique is to love. And this person is not loving Mcluhan. This person is just rehashing, okay? Instead, I have found that his insights inspire a new critical project for feminist media studies. Mcluhan, okay. So wait, I think there's a mistake here. Mcluhan's failure to acknowledge the dynamics that bind together bodies, rhythms of life, power relations, and technology should relegate him to the tired domain. This is what the general feminist idea is. However, he thinks that this person thinks, okay, no, sorry, I made a mistake. That she thinks that there is a possibility for a feminist revival of Mcluhan. Mcluhan himself might not have had his eye on economics, politics, and bodies, but the medium as the message is a media theory relevant to feminist and critical approaches. Taking it up as a critical framework is an innovation to more deeply consider social structures and power dynamics that inhere in technology. As Jonathan Stern has argued about the great male figures within media and communication studies, we can still run with the curiosity of scholars and can do so without taking their findings as timeless truth. Excuse me, this is an anti-feminist idea. The idea that we can separate the curiosity of the philosopher from their standpoint epistemology is anti-feminist, my friend. You cannot separate the medium from the message. The standpoint epistemology is the most important thing. Just because Mcluhan was worried about Dagwood's effeminate men and henpecked husbands doesn't mean that we need to be. We take his analysis without taking his attitude. As Janine Marshal has argued, Mcluhan had a quite telling and instructive treatment for gender in The Mechanical Bride, folklore for the industrial man. For example, Marshal points out that the gender is a significant category in Mcluhan's critique of post-war America, but his focus was not on the objectification of women's bodies in advertisements. This is just a blatant, obvious, continual, hysterical contradiction within feminism. On the one hand, sex work is real work. On the other hand, don't objectify my body. I mean, this kind of basic, like, shit is just not. It's just allowed in academia. It just doesn't make any sense. But on the ways women's bodies were instrumentalized and rationalized to mirror the relationship between finance and engineering. Wow, that is much more. This is the objectification, my friends. That is objectification. This is what the objectification that Mcluhan talks about: the industrialization of man, right? The commodification of our interpersonal relationships. That is the Napoleonic era of machine-like, the marching regiments of Napoleon. That was the first machine of the printing press. That beautiful analysis. That is real objectification, my friends. Not this kind of inability to take responsibility kind of objectification that feminism constantly is vicariously traumatized by. We are also inspired by Anna Balsamo's technology of the gendered body, which takes a cue from Mcluhan's focus on the creative possibilities that come from an understanding of new media work as over, but more specifically how media works upon bodies differently. Balsamo reads in Mcluhan a submerged discourse of gender that continues to organize and make intelligible the discourses of the body in late capitalism. Or we can do so as Armand Townes does and take his media theory on directly, turning his analysis back on his own text. Townes argues that Mcluhan's treatment of black people in his media theory is an indication of the white supremacist view of black people as a medium and the ultimate expression of... Okay. Oh, God. So I gotta read that book as well. I didn't know there was a whole. I don't know. I didn't know I had to defend Mcluhan, but I guess I have to. The contributors to this volume confront Mcluhan's treatments of gender, race, sexuality, and class directly in order to unravel the medium-specific logics, or what we call the technologics, that produce and maintain social differences. Again, the whole reason why this even exists is calling Hannah Arendt racist, is calling Mcluhan racist, is calling all these people racist and sexist. The reason why we live in that culture is because we live in a publish or die mentality, an affirmative action culture that socially reproduces a very specific mindset, and they keep reiterating this mindset in the higher echelons of university, and they call it thinking, when really it's just regurgitation. It is important to note here that the question of Mcluhan's gender politics is often addressed in one of three ways. One response is to dismiss him as an anti-feminist and refuse to read or engage him. Wonderful! That's the correct response. Refuse to engage or read him. The second is to let him off the hook. This is actually a good prelude to our question about whether Hannah Arendt is racist. Okay, how often have feminist scholars had to endure the hideous explanation that racism and sexism were part of the past? It's part of the present. In fact, it's even more part of the present now because of intersectionality. Because intersectionality is this amygdalic, constant reminder that you are brown and you have to stay down. You have to constantly remember that you are in a social capitalist cost-benefit analysis, privilege analysis, emotional labor analysis with all other human beings. And this is much more of a racist and sexist world because of intersectional feminism, not despite. Okay, such a view straight, and because not only that, but it's upheld the identity politics of white people. Now, white people have no problem with playing the identity politics game, and that's what basically is happening with regards to Donald Trump. It's because all sides cannot deal with their collective historical trauma. Such a view straightens, which is the main concept, the main idea in my whole channel, is collective historical trauma and trying to heal from that. And I think that ritual is the way to heal from that, and a lot of that is taken from Marshall McLuhan. Such a view strangely follows the logic of linear history, a view that Mcluhan himself would have written off as an excuse that only a print man locked in his confining compartment linear mindset of the printed world would espouse. Wonderful. That's a great analysis. And I'm pretty sure Mcluhan had this kind of a critique of this one-dimensional Hegelian perspective as well. But I digress. There is no Ouija board here to tell us what Marshall McLuhan would say anyway. Nonetheless, a third response to McLuhan and gender locates the role of women played in his scholarship. For example, the handwriting of Corinne Mcluhan, his wife, has been a subject of intense archival examination. The notes taken by his female assistants have been archived and discussed as the invisible hand of women in his work. Oh, the unpaid emotional labor of all these people. His relationships with Jane Jacobs and Jacqueline White are often indications that he was sympathetic to women. While recognizing the earnest efforts of these scholars to find a place for women in his work, Re-Understanding Media does not need Mcluhan to be a feminist. This book is not concerned with Mcluhan and his life and times, but rather with his media theory and his possibilities of feminist media. And the possibility of a feminist medium is the message. There is no possibility of a feminist medium as a message because you cannot separate, because feminism is based on standpoint epistemology. You can't have a medium as a medium. So standpoint epistemology, if you don't know what it is, I highly recommend for you to take a look at the relationship between standpoint epistemology and the market. Just search standpoint epistemology and market, and there's a paper about that. The similarities between the standpoint epistemology and market logic. Finding the women in Mcluhan's work or listing the women who have written about Mcluhan does not indicate feminist engagement. In the former case, it universalizes the category of women while forgetting that being a woman is not the same as being a feminist. Exactly. But feminists themselves always forget this, because if you critique feminism, they call you a misogynist. They call you hatred of women. Right? Feminists themselves don't espouse this. So you can see how there's just the reason why feminism has so many hypocrisies is because that's how neoliberal colonialism takes over the world. On the one hand, they say feminism is about equality. On the other hand, it's about affirmative action. We are not concerned with adding to the hagiography of Mcluhan or cleansing his personal reputation. Thus, none of these three responses to gender and Mcluhan speak to this project. I can't wait like 40 years from now when we look back at this craziness at this time, this hysteria of this time. We're going to be like, oh man, people were really messed up. Instead, we are interested in how this media theory allows for the most critical framework for thinking about technology and its power. So even though he did not account for the structural differences in his work, he approached technology as a structuring form of power. When Mcluhan's theory is fully engaged, it offers a political understanding of media beyond content and technology beyond a tool. To consider the message from a feminist perspective is to consider a multiple relational changes in pace, pattern, and scale as a media technology can introduce within society. A feminist approach to medium as the message rejects the focus on the message as a singular change upon a singular subject, and instead locates the multiplicity of unaccounted changes ushered in by the media technology, related but not limited to changes in pace, pattern, and scale. See, I looked at the work of Sarah Sharma, and all of her work is just this flowery talk, this kind of, oh, we need to address things, we need to address people. Okay, it's just a sad state of affairs with regards to academia. In 50 years ago, if you have an English degree, you had to know like 3 different languages to get an English degree. Today, you take a couple feminist classes and you get a PhD. Okay, in understanding media, the Mcluhan famously turned to the light bulb to introduce his overall media theory. The message of the light bulb was the radical social and economic transformation that ensued when the definitional and experimental boundaries of day and night shifted, with newly light-filled rooms. But to extend this theory into gender and labor studies, one can understand how the light bulb shifted the gender labor of the day and ushered in new politics of night, replete with new subaltern republics, transgressive politics, and different modes of policing. Yeah. Cheating on your the light bulb also made possible the second shift or double day that second wave feminists have illuminated in their own work. The new social patterns and the structure of social differences that emerged were inexorable to the light bulb. See, Okay, another reason why intersectionality just cannot take up Mcluhan is because intersectionality generally disagrees with the guns, germs, and steel thesis. The guns, germs, and steel thesis is kind of a technological overdeterminism, right? And that's why generally intersectionality doesn't like the technological determinism of this kind of white male perspective. In his example of the light bulb, we might begin to see the political potential of this media theory as pointing media scholars to the media logics at play in forms of systemic inequality and structural difference. Mcluhan's media theory insists on both ontological and epistemological power of media. Through Mcluhan, we can understand how the medium sets the parameters and possibilities for not only communicative action, but political and social change. Okay. To take up Mcluhan's theory within the purview of feminist media studies, a critical approach to media study oriented to issues of gender, race, sexuality, and social justice means that one must consider how the terrain of struggle in question is technologically produced. Thus, Mcluhan's understanding of technology as a form of power is an understanding of media that precludes questions about representation, ideology, policy, and even political economy. Okay, I'm going to read that one again. Thus, Mcluhan's understanding of technology as a form of power is an understanding of media that precludes questions about representation, ideology, policy, and even political economy. So media comes before that. In other words, it is necessary to consider the technological conditions of possibility that have determined effect that are tied to the terrain of struggle. I don't know if I agree with this because the other big line of Mcluhan is that we shape our tools and our tools shape us. That's the big what is it? We shape our tools and our tools shape us, but it's equally as true that the politics can. Anyway, she has a specific the second most important line of Mcluhan goes directly against this. I'm not really sure. Okay. All right. What they're saying. So let's just keep reading and maybe we'll find out. In other words, it is necessary to consider the precise technological conditions of possibility that can have determining effect and are tied to the terrain of struggle. He never takes a cause and effect perspective. He's always we shape our tools and our tools shape us. It's a kind of a spiritual perspective. Okay? He doesn't say that media is before politics. He doesn't say that. I don't think he says that. Mcluhan, that's why we shape our tools and our tools shape us exists. Mcluhan's understanding of technology as a form of power raises new questions about representation, ideology, policy, and even political economy, whether he has addressed them directly or not. Feminist and critical race scholars have long been doing the work of examining exactly how the medium is the message by locating specifically how, where, and to what extent different technologies alter the tempo, scale, and rhythms of life in differential ways for different populations while also paying specific attention to how patriarchy, racism, and other forms of violent forms of power are extended through technology, and C, how technologies extend people's ability to resist patriarchy and racism. God, please help me. But I would add a very crucial caveat here. Mcluhan's media theory can add an additional layer to these critical approaches because his theory allows us to consider the technological while still being medium specific and content specific. Work addressing the questions about what a medium affords in terms of difference or how inequalities are baked into various media technologies are already doing this to some extent. All right. This is like ideas like I don't know, air conditioning is racist, and ideas like or air conditioning is sexist because it's made for men's bodies. Or the other idea was that VR technology is not made for women, or video games are not made for women, or this kind of non-stop insanity. This represents some of the most critical work in the field, but we must also address the fact that technologies cannot be understood outside race, class, gender, and sexuality. They can't, because we're traumatized. Yeah, because of constant vicarious traumatization by the progressive left. Okay, the reason why we can't forget, okay, is not because blackness is imposed upon us, it's not because gender is imposed upon us. What do I mean by this? They do tests, right? They do tests with two different groups, control group and non-control group. The one group of students, they say, hey, do this test and we'll see. Everybody, different gender, class, race, and they do the test and they all do average. Then on another test, they remind people, hey, what is your race? What is your gender? On the top of the test, you have to write down your gender and race. And what happens is that people conform to the stereotypical perspectives. So if they're a black or a woman, they do worse in the math section. If they are Asian, they do better on the math section because they are reminded of their gender and race. So the reason why we have to keep being reminded that we are of a certain class, gender, race, etc. The reason why we have to keep bringing up that intersectionality, class is a different one, okay? But the reason why we have to keep up this pseudo-intersectionality is because we have to be reminded that you are brown, you must stay down. You are brown, you must stay down. It's white supremacy, actually. And it's white supremacy enforced by intersectional people. And we may want to spend some time more time on the notion of baking may foreclose in terms of thinking about technologics. Moreover, we must accept that race, class, gender, and sexuality cannot be understood outside their intersection within the technological. We must be careful that turning to baking as a metaphor does not then translate into an understanding of difference in terms of singular identity categories accidentally treated as separate ingredients. Mcluhan's media theory allows us to avoid this potential misstep. By providing a feminist refocusing of Mcluhan, this project gathers the force of feminist material perspectives in order to provide a more detailed consideration of how the technological is an important dimension of the intersectional experience. The intersectional experience. What is the intersectional experience? Constant sadness. Constant vicarious traumatization. That's the intersectional experience. We incorporated Mcluhan's into the project of feminist media studies in order to inspire. How many? I don't think I've ever read a feminist text that doesn't talk about inspiring. Like every single intersectional text says the same shit. It's insane. It's absolutely insane. Okay, a feminist medium is the medium. A feminist medium is the message. It's because it's a hive mind agreeableness culture, right? Hive mind agreeableness culture. Social capitalism enforced intersectionality. Everybody says the same shit. It's the reason why everybody says the same shit is because it's neoliberal colonialism. They have to make sure that everybody is commodifying our emotional labor. They have to make sure that the people are doing that because the economy needs more and more growth, right? How do you get growth is by what is it called? The biopolitics of the individual. Okay, maybe there's some Foucault in here. There has to be some Foucault. There's 3 mentions of Foucault. Okay, so we're gonna get to it. Okay, it seems an odd starting point, but I begin both my graduate and undergraduate technology courses by explaining the relationship between technology and power through the work of Canadian media theorist Harold Adam Innes and Marshal Mcluhan. Yeah, Innes is basically Mcluhan's like partner or something. I think maybe he's a teacher or he's just another guy you always read. In The Bias of Communication, Innes connected the rise and fall of empires to the properties of given cultures dominating media forms. I think Innes influenced Mcluhan actually. I'm not sure who was first. An empire needed to be able to extend its power across various distances, spaces, also endured over history and time. Oh yeah, this is Innes's argument, but it's found in Mcluhan's work. Mcluhan talks about the Mongolians and how it's all about space and time is shrinking, and that's what globalization is all about. It's this collapsing of everything into commodification. Really, that's the story. The crux of Innes's media theory, and that's why he's a Catholic, right? Because he believes that there is a sacred space, there is the home, there is the church, there are things that cannot be consumed into this liquidification, this Marxian liquidification. Everything solid and gas, nature, gender even becomes a matter of play. This Butlerian neoliberal play. The crux of Innes's media theory is that power is derived not from the content of the medium, but from the technology, space, or time-binding capabilities. While Innes compared stone, clay, and tablets to the properties of parchment and paper, the contemporary digital context brings us tweets, web pages, blogs, YouTube channels, Reddits, and 4chan. What we learn from Innes and other scholars within the so-called Toronto School of Communication is that our governing technologies portend a techno-logic. The way power works, the shape it takes, will be very specifically tied to the medium in question. Part of our critical work as media scholars then is to locate these technologics in order to reveal how power is working on bodies, genders, blah, 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 sections. This means paying attention to a relationship between technology and difference, where technology is not just a tool wielded by different people differently, or where technology is an addendum to a particular identity. It means we must also consider how the technological is a mode of power within systems of social struggle. For example, we must ask for how technologies produce race. Mcluhan's theories of media challenge the dominant cultural understanding of technologies as tools whose effects depend upon their use. In fact, that technologies are even imagined as tools, neutral in and of themselves, that depend on policy changes, shared forms of control, or perceived as in need of a more diverse representation in their development, is part of today's dominant techno-logic. What gets built and designed is determined by the requirements of patriarchy, capitalism, and white supremacy. Patriarchy and capitalism are against each other. White supremacy and capitalism are against each other, right? That's why but we can't stop lying. The feminists can't stop lying, right? It's obvious that capitalism, again, is against patriarchy, but they just don't stop lying. It's obvious that capitalism and white supremacy are two different things, okay? They're not together, okay? Technologies are understood to be powerful materials design. And see, this idea, the heteropatriarchal norm, if this doesn't go critique, this is a very dangerous idea, that patriarchy and capitalism are allied, when clearly it's feminism that's taking up capitalism today, when clearly patriarchy is against capitalism. Patriarchy wants the worship of the home, the worship of the father in the home. Capitalism wants the bifurcation of the family, the bifurcation of the community, the destruction of social structures, the destruction of social structures like patriarchy. Everywhere that neoliberal colonialism of capitalism has gone, its first task was to destroy the traditional societies, and a lot of those traditional societies were patriarchal. Capitalism destroys patriarchy everywhere it goes. But none of the feminists acknowledge this. And it's quite sad, actually. It's sad because what happens is that the right wing grows, solidarity is dead. Intersectionality has always been a CIA tool to kill solidarity. Technologies are understood to be powerful materials designed and harnessed to alter the social world. Technologies can determine the social order in unanticipated ways. So the social order is already predetermined, right? The social order for feminism, for intersectional feminism, is already easily recognizable. It's right there in our phrase. Whereas the real understanding of neoliberalism is that we don't know who to point our fingers at, right? That's what the situation of Occupy was. In Occupy, we kind of knew it was the 1%, but we didn't really know how to point our fingers to the 1% because it was a system. And that slowly, the democratic assemblies of Occupy were slowly destroyed by the feminists and the intersectional people, because the police and the CIA and all these people found out that the best way to destroy Occupy was to get them to fight each other, right? Especially about their own collective trauma shit, especially about the race and class and gender issues. So then they would always be at war with each other, and who's going to win at the end of the day? The 1% white man. Technologies are understood to be powerful materials designed to and harnessed to alter the social world. Technologies can determine the social order in unanticipated ways. In particular, they change social conceptions of time, space, and distance, and more. Fundamentally, what it means to be human in relation to one another. Many feminist technology scholars have already argued that within a patriarchal society, technologies function to extend the patriarchy. In more radical traditions of feminist thought, technology is understood as inherently patriarchal. Okay. The connections between misogyny, imperialism, and the technological power grab is not a hard one to make. Yeah, especially when you're making that connection over and 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 over, like a fucking ideological fucking thing in every institution, academia, media, the judicial system, and when every fucking institution in Canada, at least, when every institution says the same thing, yeah, of course the connection is easy to make. A cultural history of fathers A cultural history of fathers and their dominance over the television remote control has already been written. More recently, smart home. But does anybody ever talk about the who has the spending power in the family? Who makes the spending power decisions in the family? Is it the father or the mother? Historically, within the last 100 years, do a study of that. No, it doesn't matter. That doesn't conform to the patriarchal critique. More recently, smart home technologies appear at the forefront of domestic abuse cases as the new weapons of gender domination and control. How? How is this helping the patriarchy? This includes not only tracking a partner's movements through home surveillance technology, but also controlling environmental conditions against the other's will. Heating, lighting, and lockdown mechanisms. Even a cursory glance at contemporary tech industry culture, often labeled tech bro culture, yields similar results. These people are endlessly traumatized. They look at everything as a threat. It's an amygdalic problem. In the summer of 2017, former Google employee James Damrow made headlines when his company-wide Google diversity memo leaked. In it, he argued that biological differences between men and women make diversity-based hiring in tech sector problematic. Damrow was concerned that equal representation was going to be bad for Google's business and the future of software engineering in general. Media trolls and peons who have become pundits and presidents of virtue of Wi-Fi clearly recognize something about the technologics of power and this is why we need Patriot Act 3.0. And why do we need Patriot Act 3.0? It's because, people like Damrow say, things like that are matter of fact. So we need to take over. We need Patriot Act 3.0. So when Damrow writes a paper like that, the guy was fired, right? I don't even know okay. We are not suggesting that Mcluhan be forgiven for his misogyny, for his hatred of black people and racism. Instead, we confront it directly. Black people do not have a monopoly on talking about racism. Women, okay? This power equals privilege logic is evil, okay? All right? You do not have a monopoly, okay? And I can say this because I've been jumped by white supremacists. And if that triggers you, ask yourself, how many times have you been jumped by white supremacists? Even if you're a black woman, how many times have you been jumped by white supremacists? I think that you should at least be jumped by white supremacists 3 or 4 times in your life, and then you can have a say on racism. No? Are you stopped at borders? Mcluhan was certainly not oriented towards the political project of feminism or critical race theory, and we do not need him to be. Today, like Innes, we must consider the centrality of how media bind time and space and how logistical capacity of media is manipulated and directed in ways that oppose a more just world. Digital trolls take advantage of this capacity to spread their vitriol fast and far, exerting power not only through ideological and emotional harm, but also through the capacity to overwhelm others' temporal needs and diminishing others' safe space. These people are fucked up. These people are really fucked up. The 9/11 terrorists understood, for example, the potential media complex of the situation. The attack was devised with the spectacle, I think it's called the spectacle, the media for media's sake. And Mcluhan actually talks about it. The grand opening as a spectacle in itself. You have a news organization go to a grand opening. What's a grand opening? It's a media spectacular in itself. The attack, it's not like in the past, you have a burning building and then the media goes there, the news goes there to catch that event. But now you just make an event for an event's sake. The 9/11 terrorists understood, for example, this idea. The attack was devised within the spectacular power of live media coverage in mind and specifically timed to hit the 2 towers so that the second tower would be broadcast live. This is not about the media's content as a primary, but rather about media content determined by the temporality of live media. Trolls and terrorists. Oh, man. You see, this is a very, 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 very telling thing, right? Trolls and terrorists. How did we prosecute terrorists 10 years ago? We're going to be prosecuting trolls with Patriot Act 3.0 right here in the same sentence, right? A troll is a terrorist. A troll is equivalent to terrorist in this person's mind, in this person's endlessly, vicariously traumatized mind. In this person, in their head, right? In their amygdalic, non-stop thinking, right? They can't have a breath of non-thinking. If you don't know, by the way, just if you don't know how to not think, that's a lifetime kind of thing, right? That's it took a long time for me to get to that point, right? To not think, right? silence in your mind. I'm able to do that these days. Right now, I'm trying to do the work, but this person has no ability to calm their monkey mind. That's why in their head, trolls and terrorists are close together. Trolls and terrorists recognize the destructive potential for each medium's different spaces, patterns, and scales, amassing technological power in innocuous ways. Trolls have technological power. Trolls are people who are disenfranchised. They don't have any power. Terrorists are also people who are disenfranchised, by the way. Like Elon Musk, they appear to have a pretty good... So this is why all feminism is carceral. All feminism is behind the state. All feminism works to be a neoliberal and carceral organization. Like Elon Musk, they appear to have a pretty good handle on the medium is the message as a technological strategy to maintain patriarchy, white ethno-nationalism, and the perpetuation of class inequality. Again, the only people who are maintaining the patriarchy the only people who are maintaining racism is the people who are constantly reminding of us of this constant reminder, this an amygdalic reminder. The critical, this camp mentality of turning all human social relationships into cost-benefit analysis of privilege and emotional labor. This perspective can only come out of epistemological standpoint of excessive privilege and excessive insatiable insecurity. Right? This insatiable insecurity combined with privilege is the only thing that can the only thing that can produce this kind of worldview. A critical approach to gender and technology demands a feminist retrieval of the medium as the message, not only to account for the power of technology, but also to imagine the possibility of new technologics. Everybody imagine the new possibilities. I need to come up with a bunch of these pseudo intellectual things like critical juncture, imagine the possibilities, future study. This is an understanding of technology that feminist media studies scholars working at the intersection of all the sections are already bringing to bear. How many times have we heard this now? This is fucking... Nevertheless, as it stands, the set words of gender and technology usually refers to women in tech, or that technology is a tool that is used differently depending on one's gender. In each case, technology is treated as an external force that needs to be better managed. More specifically, gender technology is often understood to refer to access to technological resources and capacities that have been described as the gender-digital divide. The internet is imagined to be emancipatory technology for marginalized populations. It is also common to talk about gender technologies as representational objects that become gendered by design and marketed. In other words, objects require feminized colors or are adapted or are more precisely maladapted to women's bodies, such as air conditioning, yes! Knee replacement surgery, pacemakers, and NASA space suit. Man, the ultimate Karens. But none of this accounts for technology's category of woman. Race and technology, sexuality and technology, and class and technology are treated similarly. Technology is externality or an addendum within this framework. The problem is that people fail to account for technology as one of the forces that constructs, produces, cultivates, activates, delineates, categorizes, reproduces, maintains, and changes gender and other cultural categories. While the key aim of this book is to advance theory of technology and social difference by way of feminist version of Mcluhan's theory, it also serves as a corrective to the way that Mcluhan continues to thrive globally at the expense of so much of the unpaid emotional labor of the important and critical work that takes place within feminist critical theory. The recirculation of Mcluhan over and over again and the elision of feminist and critical race approaches occurs not just because it's business as usual for patriarchal patriarchy. There is no patriarchy anymore. The personal is political now. The court can come in the home. There is no patriarchy. There is no worship of the father. There is worship of the 1% of men, and that was created by feminism itself. Okay, that was created by a constant... The reason why we worship the 1% of men is because we've turned all human social relationships into constant capitalist cost-benefit analysis of privilege and emotional labor. Nazis get laid all the time now. We live in a world where Nazis get laid all the time. Nor does this happen just because the systematic and well-documented poor citational practice of male scholars who fail to cite scholarly work of non-male. Oh my God, the erasure. Hey, how about the erasure of Hannah Arendt from feminist studies? How about the erasure of the work of people who are critical of feminism from feminist work? How about all of the erasure of the labor history that feminism has done? How about the erasure of so much critical thinking that could have been done within the last 50 years, but was excluded because of this intersectional logic of power equals privilege that excludes thinking, different kinds of thinking that don't conform to the intersectional ideology. Judges are chosen based on intersectional ideology. Judges are chosen based on affirmative action, right? The chapter that follows in Canada, the chapters that follow take up Mcluhan's invitation to locate the technologics that inhere in different media institutions to determine how power operates in culture, but leave behind Mcluhan's universalizing and grand narratives. They do not engage in hair-splitting over Mcluhan's inaccurate technological detail. Instead, we collectively pause on the more significant contribution of Mcluhan, one which asks people to think about how technology serves as the bridge between culture and power. He was by no means an expert on hardware, future software, fiber optics, satellites, or the human senses. His grandiosity betrays him in the same way that so many men today consider themselves technologists simply because they are online a lot of the time. Why do these people get hired? It's because of the whole system is fucked up, right? These people who can't control their trauma. Why are they hired? It's because they can't control it, right? They're endlessly pissed off at the, I have a poem talking about this called the flight of the bumblebees and the plight of the dandelion. I'm going to put the poem in the description. This volume showcases some of the contributions. Okay, blah 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 blah. Okay, now they're going to talk about the volumes, but we're just going to go ahead and take a look at the first one. Okay, that was the introduction. So let's see the first. Obviously, we have to start with blackness. Okay, transporting blackness, black materialist media theory. In the late 18th century, Great Britain decided to give up on the American Revolution, resigning its colonial world over what would become the United States. For nearly a decade, the British forces fought against the American rebels in defeat in 1783. However, before the British could fully leave, they still owed a favor to a large population of the people, the enslaved people who escaped to British lines to fight against the rebels. In exchange for their fight against the rebels, the British promised to ship the enslaved people to freedom, away from the former colonies. Considered traitors by the rebels and black loyalists by the British, those black people who made it to British lines would be shipped to Nova Scotia, and their names were imprinted on Brigadier General Samuel Birch's log, famously called the Book of Negroes. Now, if you want to know more about this, there's a really I love this idea of fighting for the oppressor. There's a really good scene in the film Cold Mountain. In 1 minute, it shows the Native American guy fighting for the Republicans and the black guy fighting for the North. Fighting for the South and fighting for the North, and they're like fighting each other with the black guy and the Native American guy. It's like, oh shit, like we're both fighting a war that's like not ours. It's like a really, really amazing scene. The Book of Negroes was just a book about slavery, but was not just a book about slavery, but a book about media. Specifically, it was a book that detailed the ways that media transform who and what people are. For example, the Book of Negroes, black people's relation to transportation technologies assumed that they did not free themselves, but were freed by the British act of transporting them to Nova Scotia. Indeed, taking on an uncritical approach to race, the Book of Negroes could be read as marking black people's transformation from slave to free via the media technologies monopolized by white people. Such an assertion somewhat mirrors remarks made by Canadian media theorist Marshal Mcluhan, who argues that transportation technology not only carried people and things, but transformed them as well. For Mcluhan, transportation technologies were media because they mediated the traversal of space for people, that things transforming both in the process. As Mcluhan relied on colonial psychology, many argue that his media theory was inseparable from a larger Western racist, sexist project. But in Mcluhan's theory, there is also a potential to push the discussion of race and gender beyond. Everyone wants to imagine beyond media representation into materialist media domains. Thus, Mcluhan's theorization of transportation as transformative can be applied to race and gender, though with caution. For example, the Middle Passage was not only transported Africans to the Americans, but transformed them into enslaved peoples as well. As such, so that even as the Book of Negroes marked the shipment, were they already enslaved before the ships? Wait, the Middle Passage is the... Weren't they already enslaved? I don't know. Huh? I don't understand this. Weren't they already enslaved before they got on the ships? Or they became the I think enslaved people, yeah, that's the word. Yeah, that's what it means. It's not enslaved people. They became N-words. They became igrified. Igrification. Igrification is the word I use that to describe what intersectionality does. Intersectionality igrifies us, just like how this person says that the Middle Passage it turns us into iggers. I say that intersectionality, by turning all human social relationships into constant cost-benefit analysis of emotional labor and privilege, what it does is igrify us. It turns us all into igrification turns us all into prostitutes. As well, so much that even as the Book of Negroes marked the shipment of transformation into freed people, it could never fully undo the original transatlantic slave relationship. Thus, the shipment of black people to Nova Scotia reinforced an old Western racial logic. White people control black mobility. Those tasked with shipping black people to Nova Scotia could not fully imagine black people outside the confines of slavery, suggesting a limitation to Mcluhan's argument that transportation media always transform people and things. I mean, maybe. Burge classified the black loyalist as contradiction, as Negro and free, but only via the mobile and spatial capability of white people. For Horton Spillers, the legacy of white people violently kidnapping and moving Africans via ship and classifying them as black bodies laid the foundation for a complex concern, the continual contradiction of black gender in the West. No mention of the complicity in this whole situation by black chiefs and people. Okay, complicity is more important than intersectionality, all right? The Africans' New World diasporic plight marked a theft of the body, a willful and violent and unimaginable from this distance, severing the capacity of body from its motive will, its active desire. Under these conditions, we lose at least gender differences in the outcome, and the female body and the male body become the legacy of white people violently kidnapping. Okay. The continual contribution of black gender in the West. The Africans' New World diasporic plight marked a theft of the body, a willful and violent severing of the captive body from its motive will, its active desire. Under these conditions, we lose at least gender difference in the outcome, and the female body and the male body become a territorial of cultural and political maneuver, not at all gender-related, gender-specific. It is the violence of chattel slavery that the African body does not exist in and for itself, but now for another, now as a Negro whose black body was externally imposed meanings and uses on it. And one of those meanings was gender. As noted by the prevalence of the classification likely girl and likely boy inscribed throughout the Book of Negroes, specifically to classify those black people being shipped to Nova Scotia, black gender was classified by white authors no matter if black people were enslaved or free. For Spillers, racial slavery engendered African people, making them commodities before gendered subjects. I mean, I don't understand how we can call something a commodity in a slavery world. They're just slaves, not commodities. The ship signified a transformation from diverse. I guess they're commodities. I guess they're objects. It's not really. Yeah, I guess they're commodities. Okay, sure, fine. The ship